What would you do if someone you love simply disappeared in the middle of the night? Not a simple trip to the store, not a minor delay, gone. Vanished. And the person missing is your mother, the very woman who raised you, the one who shaped your life. Imagine the phone call that shatters everything you thought you knew about safety, about normal life, about trust. That's exactly what happened to Savannah Guthrie, the celebrated co-anchor of the Today Show, when her mother, Nancy Guthrie, went missing from her Arizona home under terrifying circumstances. It was a day that began like any other, ordinary, quiet, unassuming, and ended in chaos, fear, and questions that have yet to be answered. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The story begins with the urgent 911 calls, the flashing red and blue lights outside a suburban home, and the sense of dread that hung over the neighborhood like a storm cloud. At 84 years old, Nancy Guthrie was not just a mother or grandmother. She was a woman with a routine, with people who depended on her, and, crucially, with medications she could not live without. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos made the situation painfully clear during the press conference. If she did not have her medications, the consequences could be fatal. And yet, at the time, Nancy was unaccounted for. The stress of knowing a loved one's life hangs by a thread is something no parent, no child, should ever experience. But Savannah did. What makes this story more than just a terrifying disappearance is that the circumstances suggest a premeditated act. Investigators found signs of forced entry, and the evidence points to a nighttime abduction. A crime executed when the world is asleep and vulnerability is at its peak. But the motive, the reason someone would target an elderly woman, remains a mystery. This is not a robbery. There is no evidence of ransom, no apparent home invasion. And yet, someone saw Nancy Guthrie as a target, someone with a plan, someone with intent. What drives a person to commit such an act? Who benefits? Who could possibly harbor a reason to strike at this point in her life? These questions hang in the air, unanswered, teasing a revelation that may yet come. Think about the timeline. A typical day, a normal night, and then suddenly, the world shifts. The family wakes to a nightmare scenario, a loved one gone, a home broken into, items disturbed, the silence of a crime that happened while everyone slept. Neighbors speak of hearing nothing, because it happened at night, quietly, meticulously, almost professionally. Police investigators comb the scene for clues, every detail a potential key to understanding the unthinkable. Broken locks, scuffed floors, misplaced furniture, each one whispers a story, a fragment of the puzzle. And for Savannah, watching this unfold on her own mother's doorstep, the fear is amplified. She knows her mother's needs, her routines, her vulnerabilities. Every hour Nancy is missing is not just anxiety. It is a countdown to a potential tragedy. Imagine the emotions that surge through Savannah in those first terrifying hours. On live television, she is the anchor who brings viewers breaking news, who explains tragedies, who maintains composure while reporting disasters across the globe. Off camera, she faces the most personal crisis of her life. She must balance public awareness with private despair. She must trust law enforcement, hope that someone sees a lead, yet she is haunted by worst-case scenarios that she can neither ignore nor control. It is the kind of nightmare no one anticipates facing, let alone while being a public figure whose every move, statement, and reaction is under scrutiny. And then there is the reality of Nancy's age and health. At 84, she is far from invincible. Her medications are not optional, they are vital. Missing a dose could spiral into medical complications that are not just serious, they could be life-threatening. Sheriff Nanos emphasized this urgency repeatedly, stating plainly that, if she's alive right now, her meds are vital. I can't stress that enough. The thought that someone could be holding her against her will while these medications are out of reach is horrifying. Imagine the helplessness, the urgency, the gut-wrenching fear that accompanies every passing hour. Yet, the details of the case are more than alarming. They are baffling. The investigators do not believe this was a case of kidnapping for ransom. It is not tied to robbery or home invasion. There is no immediate financial gain. And so, the question becomes, why? Why would anyone single out Nancy Guthrie? Was it personal? Was it random? Was it something dark that the family has no idea about? Even in a world that is saturated with crime stories, cases like this are chilling precisely because they defy conventional logic. The media response has been intense, as expected. News outlets, social media users, and even casual observers have latched onto every piece of available information. Headlines flashed across the world. Today Show hosts mother missing, kidnapping in Arizona, elderly woman taken against her will. People began to speculate wildly, some with empathy, others with suspicion. The online conversation became a storm, a mix of hope, fear, and endless theories. Yet amidst all the noise, the core truth remained simple and terrifying. Nancy Guthrie was missing, and every passing minute without answers increased the danger. As we begin to examine this story, one fact looms over everything else: the human element. This is not just a story about a crime. It is a story about family, vulnerability, and the fragility of life. Savannah Guthrie's pain is universal. The helplessness that comes when someone you love is in danger and you can do nothing but wait, hope, and pray. The family's anxiety is palpable, every passing hour magnifying the stakes, every unknown detail feeding the terror of the unknown. For viewers, it is impossible not to empathize, not to imagine oneself in this scenario. The tension is universal because the fear is universal. There are also the unanswered questions that gnaw at the edges of this case. Was this planned? Was there prior knowledge about Nancy Guthrie's routine, her home, her habits? Who knew she might be vulnerable, and how did they use that knowledge? Was the perpetrator someone she knew, someone she trusted, someone in close proximity, or was it a stranger, a figure lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment? Each question opens another door, a new avenue for speculation, a new layer of suspense. Investigators are combing every detail, every corner of the home, every potential clue left behind. The broken locks, the signs of forced entry, the timing, all of these point to someone methodical, deliberate, and strategic. Yet despite all the evidence, the motive remains elusive. And it is this lack of clarity that intensifies the drama. We, as viewers, as humans, are wired to seek understanding, to connect cause and effect, to find reason in chaos. The absence of a motive leaves a vacuum, and that vacuum is filled with fear, imagination, and speculation. By the end of this story, we will explore the shocking twists, the revelations, the painstaking investigative process, and the human drama that unfolds as a result of one woman's disappearance. But before we reach that point, we must understand the stakes. Nancy Guthrie's life is at risk. Her medications are vital. Her family is in torment. And every second that passes brings a new layer of suspense, a new potential outcome, a new question that begs for an answer. And so, the stage is set. The pieces are on the board. We have an elderly woman missing from her home, signs of a nighttime abduction, a family desperate for answers, and a community, and a nation, watching closely. The story is not just about crime. It is about vulnerability, urgency, and the unknown forces that sometimes intersect with ordinary life. It is about a mother, a daughter, and a question that has no easy answer. Who took Nancy Guthrie, and why? But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It started like any other morning in Tucson, Arizona. The sun peeked over the desert horizon, painting the streets in a warm, golden light. Birds chirped lazily in the palm trees, and neighbors went about their routines, unaware that an ordinary day was about to turn into a nightmare. Nancy Guthrie's home, quiet and unassuming, sat just a few blocks from the busy main roads, a modest house with a small garden and a sense of familiarity that made it almost invisible. But within its walls, something terrible had already happened. Imagine waking up, making your coffee, and feeling the strange unease that something is off. That is exactly what the neighbors felt that morning. Something about the silence was too heavy. The usual morning routines, the hum of the air conditioner, the faint sounds of Nancy moving through her home, were missing. And yet, no one could have predicted the discovery that would follow. Inside the house, the scene was chaotic in a way that only a home invasion can create, yet subtle enough to suggest it had been planned. A broken lock on the back door, slightly ajar drawers, personal items misplaced. Nothing appeared stolen, yet the disturbance screamed of intrusion. Investigators would later confirm that every detail suggested a targeted abduction, executed with a precision that was both chilling and methodical. Someone knew exactly what they were doing, and more importantly, someone knew exactly whom they were targeting. Savannah Guthrie was the first to receive the news. Picture her sitting at the Today Show desk, professional, composed, as the morning broadcast hummed around her. And then, a message. The words were short, but their impact was devastating. Her mother was missing. Her home showed signs of forced entry, and every passing minute without answers could be life-threatening. How do you stay calm when the world you know collapses in an instant? How do you function on live television when your mother's life is dangling by a thread? The first responders arrived quickly, flashing lights cutting through the quiet morning streets. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, whispering, speculating, but powerless to intervene. Police officers moved systematically, securing the scene, examining every corner of the home for clues. They took photographs, collected fingerprints, and meticulously documented each sign of forced entry. Every detail, no matter how small, was a piece of a puzzle that held the key to Nancy's fate. And yet, despite the professionalism and the procedure, there was no immediate explanation. No note, no ransom demand, no obvious motive. Everything pointed to a single fact. Someone had taken Nancy Guthrie, and they had done so deliberately. The thought that someone could plan this, execute it, and vanish without leaving a trace is terrifying. Who would do this? And why? For Savannah, the emotional toll was immediate and intense. She went from reading the morning news to living it. Every call to the police, every piece of information, every unanswered question was a dagger of anxiety. She knew her mother's medical needs. She knew the medications that were vital, that could be fatal if missed. Every second that passed was a countdown, and the helplessness was suffocating. Imagine being trained to report disasters, to maintain calm while others panic, and then finding yourself in the center of a real-life nightmare. As investigators pieced together the timeline, it became clear that the abduction had occurred during the night. Darkness, quiet, the perfect cover for a crime meant to go unnoticed. No neighbors reported hearing anything, which suggested either extreme stealth or familiarity with the area. The question of how someone could enter and exit without detection became one of the first mysteries of the case. Was it a professional, a neighbor, someone familiar with the layout of the home? Each possibility opened a new door of speculation, a new layer of suspense. Neighbors began to speak, cautiously at first, then more openly as the story spread. "I didn't hear a thing," one neighbor admitted. "It's a quiet street, usually peaceful. But now, I can't stop thinking about it. Who would do something like this?" Their words reflected the confusion and fear that hung over the community. In a place where safety was assumed, the intrusion of violence created shockwaves that extended far beyond the walls of Nancy Guthrie's home. Inside the home, the details were as unsettling as they were baffling. The broken lock indicated forced entry, but nothing appeared to be stolen. Drawers had been opened, personal items disturbed, but no valuables were missing. Investigators speculated that the focus was singular, Nancy herself. And yet, the absence of a clear motive made the crime all the more perplexing. If it wasn't for money, if it wasn't random, what drove someone to target an elderly woman in her own home? Sheriff Chris Nanos emphasized the urgency repeatedly. "If she's alive right now, her meds are vital. I can't stress that enough." The words hung heavy in the air. The immediacy of the danger transformed the case from a standard missing person investigation into a life-or-death crisis. Every moment Nancy remained unaccounted for increased the risk exponentially. And for her family, the fear was not abstract. It was visceral, relentless, and impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, law enforcement began canvassing the neighborhood, questioning anyone who might have seen or heard something during the night. They examined security footage, scoured social media for sightings, and reached out to the public for tips. Every lead mattered. Every small observation could be the piece of the puzzle that unlocked the mystery of Nancy's disappearance. And yet, in the first hours, nothing conclusive emerged. No witnesses, no unusual activity, no signs pointing toward a clear suspect. The emotional weight of these early hours cannot be overstated. For Savannah, it was compounded by her public life. She had to navigate live television, reassure colleagues and viewers, and simultaneously cope with the uncertainty about her mother's safety. Imagine the internal conflict, projecting composure for the world while your heart is breaking behind the scenes. Every camera flash, every news alert, every social media update was a reminder that her mother's life was in danger, and the answers were nowhere to be found. And as the night settled in, with emergency lights fading from the streets and the community holding its collective breath, one thing became clear. The day that began like any other had ended in a nightmare. Nancy Guthrie was missing. The home had been violated. The family was desperate. And the answers, just out of reach, threatened to redefine everything they thought they knew about safety, trust, and the fragility of life. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming.